Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Belonging. And as I say every week, it's Imperial as One's investigation into the experiences of individuals from the Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. We want to know how they've gained their sense of identity and belonging. And this week, we have Faith Ruto with us this afternoon. And you know what? I don't know if I need to give an introduction, but Faith, I saw her a few weeks back give a talk. She's an executive coach, a keynote speaker, and the author of Transform Within. And it's just a pleasure to have Faith with us to explore a little bit more about her sense of identity and belonging. So Faith, I'm going to just kick off by asking you a question, welcoming you for one, and asking you a question about what was it that gave you your early sense of belonging as you were growing up?
Well, thank you so much, Wayne. It's my pleasure to be here. And I think that everyone that's met me has probably heard me refer to Uganda, a place where I was born. So I think that the topic of belonging is quite something that I've batted unconsciously when people meet me, because they assume I've just arrived from Uganda, but actually the truth is I arrived here in '93. So, so for me, belonging is that sense, is that sense of affinity to a place or a situation.
Yeah.
And I could probably talk about growing up, in Uganda. And I don't know if there's some Ugandans listening, but Uganda is a small country in East Africa. We like to call it the Pearl of Africa, but I'm sure every African thinks that their country is the Pearl, right?
That's right.
But we're so proud of heritage as Ugandans. And for me, my life really began in a small village in the north of Uganda, and my childhood for me, it was in our standard now is very basic, but if I would like you to imagine a small village where there is no electricity, there's no running water, there is no cars, there's no mobile phone, it's a very kind of suburban place. And for me, the sense of belonging was first belonging to a family. So the people that were closest to me were my family. I grew up in a big household. My grandparents had 10 children.
Wow.
But they weren't with me when I was growing. So I was with the two younger ones of the 10. But you can imagine there were cousins in the neighboring houses. So my belonging was first off, I belonged to a family. And in Uganda, as I'm sure in most African countries, we have something called a clan. So that's where it's tend to be where the fathers are from, not the mothers, tend to be where the fathers are from. So there was a very clear sense as a family, with our family name, that we were of a special clan, people that were warriors, hundreds of years ago. And in fact, last year for Black History Month, I told the story of my grandfather. And I was watching some of your previous recording here, and it was Rob Abdu, actually, that gave me the platform to talk about my grandfather and his role in the, in the Second World War. But again, that to me it gave me that sense that, a family that were really proud, they were really proud. But also my grandfather was a reverend in a Church of England. So my identity was one of, this kind of young girl growing up in a very family-centric household with a sense of pride, but also of service, actually. If I think about what my grandfather did, he sacrificed his life ultimately because he wanted to marry my grandmother. That was his of paying for that dowry, which is what you pay, if you find a girl that you love. So for me, there was a lot, in terms of the culture, in terms of the heritage, in terms of the family setting and the beliefs that the family had, that I think just kind of entrenched, within me. And it gave me a complete sense of, this is where I belong. These are my people. This is my faith. So that has, for me, I think, has lived with me. Even all these times I've moved around. I've lived in different countries. I'm here. I just think that is, for me, the foundation.
So you mentioned your grandfather. It's, as you said, family was very, or is very important in
Yes.
terms of the whole identity, or helping to form your identity of who you were. How did you, because you had so many cousins and everybody around, what was
Yes.
kind of like the pecking order? Was there a pecking order in
Yeah.
terms of, and where did you fit into that?
Yeah. It was interesting actually, because for me, so I grew up when I was 3 years old. I distinctively remember being told that my grandmother, who, I mean, we called her Mama. Everyone called her Mama because,
Mhm.
that was, kind of endearing name she was given. But I remember being 3 and being told that Mama was not my mom, and that I had a mom, which was somebody different. That was, as a 3-year-old, I thought, oh, that's interesting, because actually, out of all the cousins, they all had mom and dad, and it was only me and one more cousin that we didn't have a mom and dad, because our parents, so we know now, they were quite young when they had us. So my mom was about 20, and she was a nursing student. And in those days, I'm sure in the Caribbean and most African countries, if someone has a baby, like a girl who's not married, the grandparents say, we'll look after your kids. You go back to education, because education is really important.
Yeah.
So that's basically my story. So the start of my life was, I didn't really belong there,
Yeah.
and I shouldn't have felt that belonging, because I wasn't with my biological mom or dad.
Yeah.
And I had a sense of, who's my dad? I knew that he wasn't in the country because of Idi Amin.
Yeah.
There was this war in
Yeah.
Uganda, and my dad wasn't there. So, but I remember feeling a bit like I belong here, but then I don't belong, in a very kind of strange feeling, because of this mom and dad. But it wasn't, so that was kind of the comparison. So we had my uncle who were quite trendy, my aunt who were quite trendy. They were like teenagers, but if you imagine, Christmas or discos, they'll be listening to Michael Jackson and wearing really cool clothes. Very cool. So to me, I was wow, as a young kid. But I had a sense of, I wasn't, in terms of pecking order, there was the children of my grandparents,
Yeah.
who were like teenagers, and then there was me and my other cousin who didn't have a mom or a dad.
Yeah.
So in a way, I actually think that we were a bit not spoiled, but I remember people say that my grandmother treated me and my other cousin like princesses. Like, we were given jobs to do, but not heavy duties. So, like, for example, before school, the girls had to go and collect water.
Right.
We had to go get water. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen it on TV.
Yeah.
Little, with what do we call it? With container on their head.
Yeah.
That was my life. That's what you did as a girl. You came home, in the morning before school, so you collected water. The boys probably went to the field or something.
Yeah.
And then had your breakfast porridge, and then went to school, came back for lunch, went back to school. But for me, I was happy. I remember having that joy, having the sense of belonging.
Yeah.
So in terms of pecking order, I think there was definitely a distinct gender difference.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So going in then from like into schooling, how did you feel in your sense of, because children can sometimes be a bit cruel if they notice any differences. Was there anything like that, or how was your schooling perceived, etc.?
So I guess, thinking about my village again, so imagine my grandparents having 10 children, all of them went to university.
Brilliant.
Super bright.
Yeah.
One of my, I guess the wealthiest of the 10 at the time, he was like a managing director of, I don't know, some coffee or tea in Uganda, in the Kampala, which was the capital. So, he was living in it. I mean, probably a millionaire in those standards. So he had excellent quality of life. So I remember we would always send, clothes or shoes. So from a kind of comparison to my classmates, I looked really well dressed, really kind of really well. And I had lots of friends. There was no kind of this bullying that takes place here at all. I mean, like, the discipline was phenomenal. I remember the only kind of discipline we got was from the teachers. So, you can't be talking back, you can't be late, you can't have dirty shoes, like it was, proper like a military school. But I think for me, the thing that actually I remember feeling was starting primary school, like maybe nursery, I was about 6 or 7. And I remember being, the first time I got into trouble with the school was because I spoke my own language instead of English. And up to that point, honestly, it was up to that point, I didn't even know that there was this other foreign language that we were to speak. But it was actually mandatory in Uganda, and I'm sure even probably now, for primary school kids to communicate in English.
Yeah.
So my first time being in trouble was I spoke my own language in class because I should have been speaking English.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, so that was quite interesting.
How does that make you feel now, looking back, in terms of you were disciplined for speaking your own language, and you were, because you weren't speaking somebody else's language, if that makes sense?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I feel very angry actually. And it only came out when I was telling my story last year, because of the Black Lives Matter
Yeah.
movement, because we, in the UK, people that have come from most African countries have a very different background to people that are in the US, I'm sure, as you know. But I think for me, it was, I've always looked at, I've not gone into politics, and I've tried to kind of stay very neutral and say, we can't change the past, but let's learn from the past and move forward,
Yeah.
I don't want to rest in anger. I take my philosophy from from Nelson Mandela, who's all about forgiveness, and reconciliation. So I always try to be as positive as I could be. But I think telling my story and saying, a 6-year-old being beaten, it wasn't discipline like, stop talking, and it was physically being caned.
Wow.
Point where you're bruised, you're crying.
Yeah.
You go home and your grandmother's like, what happened to you? And
yeah.
And basically because you've spoken, your own language. I mean, for me, that's
Yeah.
That's not nice.
No, that I want to explore that more, but I'm going to move on because there's just it's that kind of like inculcation that you can't speak your own tongue, but that is our tongue. And for some of us, we don't even know our own tongue because of that kind of treatment. So that triggering, but we'll move on. So you excelled at school, or you enjoyed school?
I love school. I love school. So my schooling, I would say, it's been in 3 parts. So from the nursery until maybe primary 5, I was, in Uganda, in my little village. And school was, we were very, I had my cousin Alex, who were very competitive, we were similar age. So we were always like, you either be top of the class. And the school system in Uganda is one that you have to pass an exam from primary 1. If you don't pass, you don't move to primary 2.
Right.
And you'll have about 100 kids. And here we complain that there's 30 children in the class, is too much.
Yeah.
I think in my class we had 80. And we had a chalkboard.
Yeah.
There was no iPad or any fanciness. There was just a chalkboard, and the teachers were so lovely.
Yeah.
But you just all sat, you all sat on your like on your desk, and you put your hand up, and at the end of the year you were all given an exam, and you just basically ranked your number 1, 2, or 3. And if you're number 1, that means you were the best in class. And I remember, I was always top 3, top 5 with my cousin. But then there was also, I don't know if I mentioned, but there's the rebels that came in, northern Uganda and terrorized, people and killed people. So that actually affected my study a lot.
Right.
Where we had to physically run for our lives, and we had to, go into the neighboring village, or you had to go and, stop studying completely for weeks or even months because the rebels had taken over your village or your school.
Wow.
Or were kidnapping girls. These were like, the stuff you watch on TV, like, if you've seen this scene, that was my life. And it's only now that I'm an adult that I'm speaking about it, because I just
I can't even ask.
This is quite the first recording,
Right. That is really just amazing, and for many of us, we don't even comprehend. We see, but we don't fully understand and appreciate what you've had to go through. And so you said it was broken up into 3 parts. So that was the primary, and then
so then I was in Uganda. But for me, education was again a part of I belonged to a family that were educated.
Right.
So if you were, if you had to ask my family what were our pillars, would be faith, so God first, education, obviously family, and then service. They had teachers, I had nurses, doctors. It was all about giving, helping your community. My grandmother was self-taught midwife.
Right.
And she delivered lots of babies, and there's all these babies in the village with her name in it. So I think those are our family things. So my education was in Uganda, and then by the age of about 11, so my mom, if I just quickly talk about my mom, so she had me, she went, finished her nursing, she got married, had 3 beautiful boys, my stepbrothers.
Mhm.
And then in 89, she suddenly became a widow at the age of 27.
Oh my goodness.
20, with 4 children. And
Yeah.
at that time, she's practicing as a nurse in Kampala. And she had a friend in the UK who said, look, the NHS are looking for nurses, you could live a better life here, so
Yeah.
let's help you,
Yeah.
So that's how I came to arrive here. So, but up to that point, I was always living with my grandparents, not with my mom. So my mom had a completely different life. My brother's had a different life than I did. So in about, I think it was about 92, my mom said, okay, I've saved enough money as a nurse. She brought my 3 brothers here. And then it was at that point, in terms of belonging, I thought, why am I not taken with them?
Yeah.
Obviously as an adult, I now know she didn't have the money, but
Yeah.
it was the first time I remember thinking, yes, when I was left when I was a baby, that's fine.
Yeah.
But now, they've all come to, this amazing place called United Kingdom, England, where the Queen lives, they played all drinking tea, saying, London Bridge is falling down, and I went to see the Queen. That was my nursery rhyme when I was I just think I was so baffled. But so it was at that point that my journey to the UK started. So my uncle was living in Kenya, in Nairobi. So my mom's brother, and he was studying theology. So he said, look, I can help Faith come to London. So I left Uganda and I went to Kenya. And in terms of belonging, I really did not belong there. They spoke Swahili. The kids at the school there weren't very nice. So I felt like an alien, really. Like I was, again, from kind of coming from this, what I consider village to city, I didn't really feel that sense of, like wealth, because it was just a small flat. We all tried to, my uncle and his family welcomed me, but I didn't really feel like a part of their family, or I belonged at that system. So then fast forward 2 years later, I arrived in the UK. And that was, again, interesting experience. The schooling was completely different. There was no need to be smart. Actually, if you were smart, you were bullied for being smart. You were bullied for answering any correct answer to the teachers. Completely upside down to how I was brought up. And children were rude to the teacher. I mean, the poor teachers at the state school I went to, they spent, all the time disciplining the naughty kids, and anyone else was just left to their own devices. Yeah.
Your story is transatlantic. It's international. It goes that sense of, although you're in a country, but the country still wasn't your country, if that makes sense. So you came from Uganda to Kenya, but you didn't feel that you belonged. So you had that pride in your being Ugandan, but it wasn't translated into that experience that you had in Kenya. But then when you came here, again, it was just a whole new cultural change. Another transformation, as it were. How did you cope with that?
I mean, I think now, we talk about mental health and, in the youth, like we've had pandemic, and we talk about, children going through their mental health problems, or, like being depressed. I think for me, there was definitely a sense of just sadness. I remember feeling, I'm in a country where, I mean, let's be very honest, in the UK, we're not the most warm, maybe some, depends where we are. I don't want to generalize, they're lovely people, but, you don't go around saying hello to people on the street, they'll think you're crazy. So I just remember feeling like people were just so cold. The climate was freezing. I mean, it was October, it was actually snowing, right? When I arrived, it had been snowing. I'd never seen snow in my life before. And then going to school, children being really hostile, was not diverse at all. There was about 450 kids, 5 black kids, 5 black kids, and a few Chinese, some Vietnamese. So I was paired with a Vietnamese girl. She was like a nerd. So we really clicked. We did all our time in the library. And sports. I was quite sporty, actually, for somebody who was asthmatic. I used to love running. So I think I just decided, actually, that at that point, I can't change this environment I'm in. So I'm going to change my mindset. And I think that would be my kind of transformational journey into this whole idea of, to adapt. We can't, you can't, if you want to be happy in life, you have a choice. You have to make a choice. I think that was for me because, I remember my mom feeling actually frustrated, like, why are you not grateful? I think we had a conversation. She was like, why are you not grateful? I've spent all this money to bring you here and you don't seem happy. And I'm like, but I'm not happy. I don't have friends. The weather is cold. I don't like the food. The kids at school don't like me.
So what is there to be?
Live in a council flat, like this is not what I dreamt London was. And I think I want to talk about that because people see people killing themselves in the channel, in trying to cross, come to England. The vision that people have of England is completely different from the reality. In my little head, I really honestly thought, I was going to be living outside Buckingham Palace. So think about it, I didn't have TV. Okay. So, I can forgive the other people that actually can, they know what England should look. But in my head, being in a council flat, it was 3-bed. I had my own room, and all the kind of, pop stars on my wall and all this stuff. But I still, like, my mom was a bit like, no, you're just very ungrateful, child.
I think there's a stage that all parents go through that feeling with their children. I don't think you're the only one, right? So how do we get from where those experiences to where you are now in terms of your book Transformed Within? What was the stages which got you from there to here? I know that's probably a good journey.
How long do we have? Let's do a bit of time
we've
check.
Got about 10-20 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to speed up. So after I arrived in the UK, and it only occurred to me when I was speaking to my daughter. I've got 2 kids.
Right.
Speaking to my daughter and preparing her for 11 plus, I think before the pandemic or something. It occurred to me. So I left Uganda in primary 5. I was about to, but because of the war, so not the war, but the kind of rebel, I just wasn't really completing one, complete year, right?
Yeah.
So from that, I went to Kenya and I maybe did a study for a year and a half. So maybe I did primary 6 and I was going into 7. And then I came to the UK, and the system in the UK is that, it's by age. It's not by...
It's not by where...
I went to year 9. So actually, if you think about it, I probably didn't do year 7 and 8.
Right. Yeah.
9. And only if so, for me, I've just kind of been so focused on my goal. So when I was, 16, I remember being 16 thinking, okay, I've got my national insurance number. I went and started working for Burger King. After that, I worked for, I did lots of part-time jobs. I've always done part-time jobs alongside my, So I did my, 11 GCSEs. I passed despite one of my English teachers said, you don't really speak English very well. You're going to fail. And I was like, okay, I'll show you. And I passed and I had a B. I had a B in English. Somebody that actually, I didn't really speak it. When I got here, my English wasn't that great at all.
Yeah.
But I proved it. And I think that was the beginning of me. I'm gonna prove, the people that doubt me, I'm gonna do it. So I kind of started having a better vision of myself, I'm in a council flat, but I don't like it and I don't want to be here. So I started kind of like just that kind of thought of there has to be a better, there has to be a better way, or a better life to live. So I went to, through my education, I did my GCSEs, my A-levels, then Kingston University. I worked for British Airways for 1 year. And it was at that point I thought, okay, do I do masters or do I go and earn money? I thought, okay, no, I definitely want to, earn money and buy a house, all that stuff. So by the age of 25, I bought my first flat. But I also had like a long list, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have 2 kids. So I think it was at the age of 23 when I was working for Shell, because that's when I think I started working for Shell, and again, it was a dream to travel the world because I've always loved to travel.
Yeah.
And when I went to work for Shell, there was a grad program, which I got into. And we had about 35 grads that were on this scheme, but there was 2 Black girls, me and another girl. We went, we met. And I'm sure a lot of Black people identify with this. You see another Black person when you're the only 2 people in the room, you're not going to go straight and start talking to that person. You probably just pretend like, like you wave, you always wave, acknowledge.
You acknowledge.
You did. And I think that's another thing, so the belonging thing is also to do with race. We have this affinity as I think, and it's a very special thing to us, and I think it's something that, when we talk about belonging, we have a sense of affinity because of the race. So I remember seeing this girl, and then I think day 3, she's like, okay, let's have lunch when we go back to our offices. We had lunch. She said, I know this amazing Kenyan. He'll be an amazing boyfriend for you. And I'm like, I don't even know you. Anyway, long story short, I'm married to that Kenyan. Been together for 18 years. That's my husband. That's where the name Ruto come from, by the way.
Right.
Wondering. But that was, again, just by fluke.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go to this story where, so I've ticked all my boxes. I've got a house, I've got married, I've got my 2 kids, and I'm 35. I've actually, yes, and I came to Imperial. Again, I was looking for university. Now I've decided I'm gonna do an MBA.
Yeah.
My company was gonna sponsor me 1 minute, then the next they weren't, then they were, then they weren't. And I thought, I'm doing it for me. And again, the belonging from my family was, education is something that's for yourself.
Yeah.
No one can ever take that away from you.
Yeah.
So I was gonna get education because I had a vision that one day I would, have my own company. I didn't know what the company was gonna be. I just had a vision. So by having an MBA gave me, all the tools to have my own business. So I came to Imperial. There were 3 Black men, or I guess, I would say men, because, they were doing MBA. And they're like, and that was the first thing that struck me, in terms of when you talk about belonging or having diversity. All the other, I won't name them, but the big university in London, I didn't really see as many diversity. But Imperial was like, that struck me, when I was trying to ask for direction in the room, and then they said, oh, you want to do MBA? We are doing the MBA. So they sold the MBA to me. They're like, Faith, come to Imperial, as it's even when you decide to go to Africa, everyone knows what Imperial brand is, come to. So they sold Imperial to me. And
that's amazing.
So if you're watching this on recording, the power of having someone that can look like the students or the staff is so important. Because that speaks to that person. So for me, that was it. So I was like, so I came to Imperial, did my MBA. When I had my kids, I went back to my company, and they just like, oh, you've just had a baby, here's some job for you. And it was just, the job was literally drowning me. It was so depressing. It was not using my brain. And I just like, I can't do it. So then I applied for another job. So I moved from where I was into marketing, which was amazing. My title, innovator, was innovating the Shell loyalty card. I don't know if you have a loyalty card. It was amazing. It was a massive job. But they gave me the job because I have an MBA from Imperial. They thought I could do this amazing job. But that was the first time in my corporate career I felt I did not belong. It was a UK team, very backward thinking. In all the jobs in Shell, it was all very international. I traveled to Germany, to Norway, across Europe. Even though I was the only Black woman in the room, I felt warmly welcomed. I remember even being in Norway, where my colleague was 55, male, and he was like, well, like he treated me like an African would greet you, when they come, that warmth, right? The UK team were very hostile, and when we talk about the kind of not belonging or racism in the UK or microaggression, I experienced that in that team. Like,
wow.
And it was like a baptism of fire for me, because at that point I'd been in Shell for over 10 years. So, but I don't think I realized it until I left the team. But at the same time, God was working in me. I started having this sense of, I have a purpose for my life. I've done what I need to do for my corporate career. I need to make a difference. And if you read my book, God spoke to me. Live by faith, not fear. Stop playing small. If your life is to end, you have to have made a difference. And that was, so I went to work really happy. I said to my boss, I'm quitting. He was like, are you having another baby? I'm like, no. And then I thought to myself, have I told my husband that I'm going to resign? I've driven for like 45 minutes in my head. I'd already left the company and I felt peace. And I said to my husband, I said, I think I'm going to stop working. And everybody thought I'd lost my mind, honestly, like all my friends, my family. But I knew, I said, look, the worst that can happen is, at least I'll be here with my babies. I'll save the childcare costs. And, and I'll go back to work, I've saved up enough for, I think, a year and a half or whatever. But so I wasn't in a panic financially. But I was, I was going through my own personal transformation. So that was 7 years ago when I left the corporate. And then 2 years ago, just to come to the book, I was driving to give a talk in London Excel.
Yeah.
And I got into a car accident and I saw my life flash before me.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously I didn't die.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that gave me an urgency to kind of not take life for granted, you know. And it was from that, then the book. So the book has always been there. When I tell people, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Faith, write a book."
Yeah.
But I'm not patient enough to write a book, and so the idea of the book came to me one day before going to bed, and I said to my husband, "I think I've got the idea for my book." Yeah. And I sat down and I wrote the book in one sitting. I sat down from 10 until I think 10 in the morning, and he kept saying, "Are you coming to bed? Are you coming to bed? Are you coming?" And I was like, just I'm coming, and I just didn't. I just sat there and wrote the whole thing. I mean, obviously there was a lot of, kind of editing.
Yeah, afterwards, yeah.
Yeah, but that was it. That was, how it came to be.
No, that's amazing. That really is amazing. So it's 7 strategies for professional growth and resilience, as I can see it with the. I can see it in the background, and I love it. I love the backdrop. It's brilliant. Because I think the story which you've just told us and you shared with us really illustrates that inner peace which you had to have had, that although you had different circumstances, many of those circumstances would have broken a lot of people or not given them the drive. Yeah. But to me, it sounds as though it was a driving force. I think you spoke about the fact, when I think about what you've said, missing those gaps in your education because of rebellious conflict, go into different systems, and then just because of transitions, meaning that you weren't actually in a position to have what most people would class as a full-time education. But you overcame that, got your grades. You've worked hard throughout the years, and that has to be because of your mindset. So give us one or two of those strategies. I'm just wary of time, but give us one or two of the strategies which you would apply.
I think for me, there's something for me that is about not dwelling in the past, or not letting my circumstances define me. So that is how my mind works. So it's very much about, you can't, you might not be able to control what is happening to you externally, but you have to be able to control what's happening to you internally, which is that's one thing. The other thing is about choice. We all have a choice. Even sometimes we feel like we don't have a choice. So, and I want to, I guess, reference, Nelson Mandela, because he talked about, he was in prison. So physically he wasn't free, but his mind, he was free. I think that should be what we aim to do when we find that we are in a place like the pandemic where you can't make COVID go away. You can work with your mindset to say, okay, how can I react to this situation? I've lost my job. What can I do? I've lost opportunity. What can I do? I want to do the PhD, but I don't have the funding. How do I respond? And I think for me, it's about, okay, this is what's happening externally. How do I, what are the choices that I have? What are the tools that I have? And what are the people? For me, I wouldn't be here without people. I wouldn't be here without my grandmother, my mother, my teachers. I remember Jonathan Pinto, at Imperial, he was remarkably, he just had faith in me. He just said, I see that you're going to do something, and it was just the word. I don't know where he got the word from, but I wrote the book, and he was one of the first people I gave the book to read. I said, I'm sorry about the grammar, but, you need to read this book. And he read the book and he said, fine, this is an amazing book. So,
No, Faith, is I have to get your books. I'm
gonna give you a sign. I'm gonna send you a signed copy. I'll bring it to you. I'm gonna come. You're at Imperial, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We have to.
I'll come and meet you in the flesh.
That's brilliant. That would be brilliant.
Yeah.
But what I would also say is, I love the way that you mentioned about the whole idea of the mindset. And there's a couple of things which I would kind of like just want to tie up and tie into, which was with regards to, I'm just thinking back to that little 6-year-old being beaten because they spoke their mother tongue. Okay, not being able to express your authentic self, right? That's your inner self. Yeah. And now you've been able to express yourself through your book, being able to being transformed within. That's quite a journey that you've gone on, in my view. Being able to, not saying that speaking in your own tongue wasn't right, but it was the experience of the consequence of that. But then now feeling that you've got the voice to be able to say, this is what I believe, and I'm happy to express it in the form of the book which you've given to the world. And that is down to your mindset. That is down to what you've developed and how you can share that. And coming back to what you've said, I'm processing it as we speak, because I'm looking at your life in terms of faith. Your name is Faith, but it's not just a faith. You live faith. Because for you to just say, you know, that inner transformation to say, I have to now move away from a secure job to go and do something else, right? Because I know that this isn't now right for me. That takes a lot of faith and belief, in yourself, and having the support of people around. So I don't know, your story is amazing, and we've only scratched the surface. I know we've only scratched the surface, right? I'm gonna, at this time, I would normally open up to see if there's anyone who has any questions which they would like to ask. If not, I still have another couple of questions that I wouldn't mind. I'm just having a look to see if there's anyone who has a question. I think you. Right. So they're saying thanks for the reflections. So there's a question here. What advice? I'm going to just see. Would you like to ask the question, or should I?
I can ask the question, Wayne.
Yeah, then please do.
Thank you, Faith. It was a lovely sharing of your life experience, and I love hearing about childhood experiences in other countries, and that was a wonderful one for me. My question would be, what advice would you give to international students who come to study in the UK for them to find a sense of belonging that will ease the anxieties of studying for a degree, and particularly those who may not be able to find staff members who they feel they can relate to?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you for asking. I think if you turn it around, is that I've always looked at it, if it's your belonging, it's not just about, you know, someone that looks like you or share your culture. You know, you could have a sense of belonging with people that share your interests. An example could be, you know, you're into a hobby and they you know, they like that, and or it could be food, or it could be, you know, a topic. So the fact that you're with students that are already studying your subject, that is your tribe. You know, you see them. It's almost like adapt your mind to a sense of belonging or a temporary home. You know, it's Imperial is your temporary home. So embrace it. It's actually embracing it. And I think sometimes we resist it because it's like you're trying to find where you belong. But I'm saying, actually, look at the common theme that you have with the people around you, whether that's your housemates or your group that you've been put into. You know, what are your shared values or beliefs, you know, and adapt that as your temporary home for the next, I don't know how long your PhD is, but really look at that as your, you know, almost like your temporary people. And once you do that, the feeling that you have, oh, I don't belong here, or, you know, what are people going to say? But, you know, you free yourself, because, you know, you would have freed your mind to almost like embrace this new culture. But also the other thing is, if you're really missing home and missing your people, and you feel you're really, really struggling, why don't you just set it into like, you know, this, I'm going to learn, you know, I'm going to learn about British food. so who in my group or my house can teach me about this? Or, so really shift your focus so that, the fact that that sense of belonging isn't there. It doesn't overwhelm you. Does that make sense? And also, one of my favorite saying is that, the condition that you're in is never permanent. And that's why I love working in transformation and change. This feeling of belonging, that you don't belong, won't last forever. So shift your mindset to what are you actually here at Imperial to do, and do the best that you can. And embrace the culture, embrace even the weather, do the trips, and just try and learn new things. I don't know if that's answer your question, but there's a lot more to it. I think belonging is something that is affinity that you have, and it comes from childhood. That's what I think, and once you have that, like I've been here nearly 30 years, I don't even have a Ugandan passport anymore, to be honest with you. I've got a British passport, but when I speak, I sound like I'm Ugandan because I just have such a fond, memory of it. Mm-hmm. But when I go back to Uganda, they're like, you're kind of not Ugandan anymore, you're a bit British. To be honest, I've lost my Ugandanness, but yeah. It's funny. But I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yes, it did. I completely agree that finding common interests and beliefs and values is definitely a connecting point. And I definitely 100% agree with food. I mean, I love going out to eat with people from different cultures. It's like the best time to bond. So yeah, very good advice. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that question. Faith, you said something there. Well, I wanted to just follow up on something which you had said earlier on, which was regarding the fact that your first experience of Kenya wasn't as pleasant as it could be. Yeah, you were living with your uncle, which was great, but schooling and stuff wasn't that great. And now you've ended up marrying a Kenyan, okay? Have you been back, and has your experience been different since you've gone back with your husband?
Yes, and yes. So the reason why I'm with my husband is because I lived in Kenya.
Okay.
So the matchmaker, the friend that I met, her question to me was like, I know a Kenyan boy. He studied IT at Cambridge, so he's very bright. I'd studied IT as well. And I think at the time he lived in Wimbledon and I lived in Kingston. And that was the basis of how she matches. I wasn't looking for a husband, but that was how she did it. But I think, we've so going back to Kenya, it's very different because my husband, his father was a diplomat. So they're completely different class to my class in a way. But very differently. I spent, all these years saying to my daughter, like telling her my story. She loved hearing my stories because I don't talk about the negative. I just talk about happy. Tell her, So the first time we went to Kenya, she was surprised that her grandmother is a lecturer and drives a Mercedes because she thought all these African people are so poor. She couldn't understand it. So for me, actually, I going back to Kenya as a wife was very different. I was really welcomed. And the culture is that I'm now a Kenyan, actually. When you get married, you're given to the husband's family. Yeah. So, when I die, I will be buried in Kenya, unfortunately, because that's my home. That's not where my home should be. That's how, when we talk about belonging, and that's another weird thing, maybe another conversation, but a girl, when she marries, she belongs to the husband's family. Yeah. No longer belongs to her, her people.
I understand.
So
It's almost, it comes back to what you just said in answering the previous question where you said the conditions you're in are never permanent. That situation of being in one family, you're still a member of that family, but circumstances change. It's never permanent. And it's how you adapt to those different situations is really key.
And I think, so belonging is fluid. I think we should look at belonging as, we should have a strong belonging, which I think, whether you're parents or, seek to feel that sense of, you belong. If you don't have it, look to have it. Whether it's through sports, music, find that sense of I belong, and because it gives you stability in your life. It makes you you can step in your authenticity because
Yeah.
you know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But apart from that, also there's an element of adapting. You have to adapt. So for me, I've adapted my role as a mother, I've adapted my role as a wife, I've adapted as, now, go to Kenya. But the thing that unite the family is actually faith as well. His families are also very religious and very educated. So there's levels that I think similarity between the family that, that's
brilliant. I'm going to just say it's been wonderful having you on. Really has. It's been a really fascinating discussion that we've had. I'm going to my final question, and this is, what advice, you've given quite a lot of advice already, but what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self or your younger self as to how they should tackle life going forward?
Good question. I think, to be honest, I don't think I would change anything. It sounds really weird because at 16, I made a list of things that I wanted to have achieved in life. But I think actually maybe one thing I would do is, now we talk about authenticity. I don't think I could be authentic. I didn't really feel I could be myself. Earlier on in my career, I was still trying to fit with everybody. I think that's probably one of the things that I would change, is just embrace who I am, because I haven't changed. Like the story I'm telling you now about my childhood, and I think that's what's made me who I am. That's my power, like that is me. And I think, that's my unique selling point. People talk about my business, it's me, I have my brand. And I think if I knew, what I was sitting on, I should have just, been more of that earlier on, in terms of try to fit in the corporate culture and all this stuff we do. But I think the next generation are not like our generation. I think they're not wasting. They're not wasting time at all.
It's been absolutely brilliant having you on. I'm gonna stop I'm gonna just let everybody know what's happening for next week, but it's another really big thank you for giving up your time to share your story and your experiences. I feel like there's lots that I can transform based on what you just said, and I'm looking forward to the book, definitely.
Thank you thank you so much for this opportunity. I've shared more than I never really planned details. I'm not, a detailed person, so I've shared more than I thought I was going to share. But it's just been wonderful. For you're a great facilitator, and
thank you.
I just hope that some of the things that will be helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to just share this, and if anyone wants to stay behind afterwards, then please feel free to do so. So next week, we're going to have Maisie Barrett, who will be, I'm hoping we're seeing the right thing. Yeah, Maisie Barrett, who is an author and a contributor to the BBC's programme Subnormal, A British Scandal. Now, this is something which it really touches very near to my heart. And so I know it's going to be a really good interview. So please tune in next week. If you haven't seen some of the previous belongings, you can go to our YouTube site and you can find it at tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO. So what I want to say is a big thank you to everyone who came and for tuning in, and come again another time. Thanks very much and have a good weekend.